Two European historians are currently visiting cities across Western Canada. They're here to reveal the virtually unknown story of a 20th century massacre by British forces at the end of World War II in Lienz, Austria. The victims were Ukrainians and other East Europeans attempting to escape communist tyranny in what was then the Soviet Union. The two are here to raise awareness as well as funds for a memorial at the site. Dr. Harold Stadler is professor of archaeology at the Leopold Franzens University in Innsbruck, Austria. He'll be giving a presentation entitled The Fate of the Cossacks in Lienz During the 20th Century. As well, Dr. Stadler's assistant, author Anton Schleha of Germany, is launching his book called Surviving Lienz. The book sheds light on the human cost of Operation Keelhaul at the end of World War II. The first stop was here in Vancouver this past Tuesday. They'll be heading on next to Winnipeg, Manitoba, Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, and Edmonton, Alberta. Joining me now is Anton Schleha of Germany, who writes under the name of Anton Schleha. He gladly agreed to tell us about the project he's working on with Dr. Stadler, as well as his book and his personal connection to this tragic historical event. Thanks so much for speaking with me today, and welcome to Canada.
Thank you for having me.
I'm sorry that we've greeted you with rain and clouds, but it's hopefully next time you'll come back here soon and we'll have sunshine, and I do hope other things have made up for it.
Oh, yes, especially meeting the nice people here that I've met so far in Canada. It's been great here.
Well, for the benefit of listeners who weren't able to make it to your presentation in Vancouver here on Tuesday, and also for those tuning in from other cities, can you tell us a little bit about what this project is?
Well, the main project is to get people's attention to the Cossack massacre that actually happened by the British soldiers at the time. Well, our aim is basically to have a museum built in the form of a bridge, and right next to the bridge is the Cossack cemetery, and then further down the road is the chapel. St. Anton's Chapel is Greek Orthodox, and that's where the icons are from all these Cossack tribes.
Okay, so the project is to raise awareness. And what's the memorial then at the site of this tragedy?
Well, the memorial is basically it's a walk-through type of museum. It's going to be done with new electronic gadgets and devices, and it'll be roll-on screens, roll up and down, and basically some of the artifacts, either the pictures themselves or copies of these artifacts will be placed in the museum. So it's going to be an interesting project.
So an interpretive center then that tells the story of this tragedy.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
So your book, you're launching a book. Dr. Stadler is giving the academic presentation of this historical event. So, and your book has got a personal side to the story. Tell us what was this tragedy? What was this massacre all about?
Well, basically, Lienz is a huge valley which the River Drau flows through, and then what the British did was put all these Cossack peoples and tribes and soldiers all in one place to keep them in confinement. But it wasn't an actual prison. It was basically large fields, and they said, okay, you people go camp in this field, you people go camp in that field, and there was something like 5,000 or 6,000 horses that were just running around.
Wow.
So you can imagine, it was basically just like an old Taras Bulba film. And at the same time, not only have you got the troops here, you had their families with them, you also had a flight of refugees coming from the other side, coming up from Klagenfurt and Villach and Leoben, because the Russians were moving in on the other side, and they came in close to Judenburg. So people were fleeing from the Soviets, running for the Cossacks to
protect them?
To protect them, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So the story in your book, tell us about that a little bit.
Well, this is a personal story of one of my father's friends. We see, after this incident, there were a lot of in the same valley, in the same areas, there were a lot of DP camps, displaced persons camps. In these camps, people got together and they talked and they had fun. And although it was war, you had the musicians, and Ivan was one of the musicians. And even in the worst times, the musicians were basically the center of entertainment, if you can call it entertainment, but it was basically a relief of all this sadness.
Sure. So,
my father and Ivan, he was a violinist, got together and had a few drinks and became good friends, and they kept in contact after the war, basically. And this story is from Ivan's son. Well, Ivan was there with his family. Ivan was there with his wife, and Ivan was there with his two sons. And what happened in this story, what I've written about, is the personal events and feelings of actually what happened in Lienz. It was told through Victor, through Ivan's son, as a three-year-old.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and how he adjusted to life, and at first, he thought that these were not the British soldiers, but the Russian soldiers who had shot up. And he went through most of his life, all these years, thinking that it was the Russians who actually caused the problem in Lienz.
So, and the problem in Lienz then was there were all these people in this huge field, and they thought that they had found sanctuary from the Soviets, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so what did these soldiers do then?
Well, what happened was basically the British tricked the men. You can imagine there was about 25,000 people in this particular area, in these fields. So they didn't gather them all at once because, first of all, they were armed. So they had to disarm them. And they let the officers keep the small arms weapons, the pistols, to keep order. And because it was a fighting troop, they kept themselves in order, and the Brits let them. In fact, the Brits were very, very friendly to the Cossacks and to these peoples. They even gave them rations and talked with them and told them that everything was going to be all right, and they don't have to worry about anything. They won't be sent back.
And what happened?
What happened was the men were separated from the women. The officers were tricked and taken away directly to Judenburg and were basically shot in Judenburg.
By whom?
By the Russians. Judenburg is a place where the British district stopped and the Russian district started. If you can imagine Berlin or Vienna in the war, you had the Soviet districts and you had the British districts and the American districts. Well, this was just British and Soviet.
Okay.